I haven't seen anybody score 23 points a game in 35 and 41. So I think that I've been really blessed by the Lord. And I just thank him for all the talents that I have.
We interrupt this program for a special report from Channel 4 News.
A local success story took a tragic turn this morning.
Page County emergency.
I'd like to have an ambulance come. 1103 Washington Hall. It's an emergency. Lynn Bias.
Bias was rushed to Leland Hospital early this morning by ambulance.
You know, Lenny was a hero in the area.
Where I grew up at, we were Georgetown Warrior fans. He changed that whole area.
Incredible college basketball.
He had lift when lift wasn't popular.
He was smooth, you know, he had a really good jump shot. He could dunk on anybody from anywhere.
It probably won't dawn on me till I'm about 10 years later when I'm old and watching somebody else play and say, well, I used to could do that, and I could do it better than that.
Two of the finest athletes in the country, Michael Jordan and Bias, going up side by side. Bias just out.
Michael was somewhat like Lenny, but more high profile.
Lenny Bias's game was probably as strong as Michael Jordan's at that point in their career.
A lot of people say, well, how do you do that? And I don't really think there's anything. There's nothing to me. It's a small thing. I dunk the ball and they just go off.
The Boston Celtics select Len Bias of the University of Maryland.
Really hoping that it could have been Boston in the end.
Yeah, I really was hoping that it was Boston. And my dream came true. You have a lot of free time. You just have to know how to use your time, and that's where the drugs and the social life comes into play, and that's where a lot of players get caught up in.
Len Bias, you have to get him back to life. There's no way he can die.
Bias is rushed to Leland Memorial Hospital. For 2 hours, doctors try to revive the basketball star, but at 8:50, he is pronounced dead.
The death of Len Bias.
The death of Len Bias proves that you don't have to be addicted to cocaine for it to kill you.
You had to know somebody to even get it and go to certain places where it was sold. It wasn't sold on a street corner.
There are people who know how the drugs got in the room. Nobody forced us to do what we did tonight.
And sources say police are looking for a man who goes by the name of Tribble.
Coke was mostly being used to stay up because it was a late night.
I really don't know if I'm up to this, but I guess Leonard would want me to say something.
You got to look at every situation as though it's going to be the end of your life.
And, of course, that 26 years ago today, one Mr. Mike Morrison lost one of his best friends and childhood friends. And, Mike, I'm not trying to make this a somber moment for you, but obviously going all the way back to Northwestern High School, you saw one of this gentleman play basketball. You knew exactly his capability. Most folks thought he would be the greatest player to ever play in the NBA. Of course, 3 days after signing with the Boston Celtics, he so tragically lost his life. I'll bring you back on. I know you're only 1 day removed from being in the studio with us yesterday, and I didn't really want to bring it up yesterday, quite frankly, A, because we ran out of time, and B, because I knew that this would be weighing heavy on your heart knowing that today was going to be the day. But I did want to bring you on and let you express to everybody just how special this young man was, not only in your life, but a lot of folks' lives around you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Will. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about it. It's funny, I got a phone call this morning at 7 o'clock from my high school coach who coached me and Lynn, and he was not in a good mood. He says, you know, I've dealt with this for a long time, but today he was kind of having a hard time. And the thing that he had the hardest time with was why do so talented people have such a great fear of failure? And it's interesting because we're looking at LeBron James and we're looking at a kid that's 6'9", 260 pounds, and he moves like a gazelle. And it's the first time we've ever seen one like it. But if you saw Len Bias, he would have been the first to have that type of poetry at that size. No, he probably wasn't as good of a talented ball handler, but he was 6'8", chiseled like a Greek god, and could jump out of the gym. Had a butter soft jump shot. Arguments say that he and Michael Jordan would have been 1 and 2, if not 1 and 1, as far as great players of their eras. But, you know, he was just a tremendous talent. But the thing that us who knew him well, we also knew the fear of failure, the fear of letting people down, which inevitably led to him overdosing on cocaine. And, you know, it is a somber time for me because of how much Len meant to me as an athlete, as a person. He was the reason why I never used drugs, so his death had a very positive impact on my life, but he also was the motivation for why I thought I could achieve my dream of playing in the NBA, because he went to my high school, and he was the first guy that I knew personally to make it to the NBA. You know, I knew Adrian. I knew him growing up, and I knew of his plight to get there, but he wasn't a draft pick. Adrian had to go through free agency to get there. But here's a guy that lived in my neighborhood, went to my high school, did everything I did every day, and he made it to the NBA.
Well,
and he motivated me to not only work hard to achieve it, but to maintain some level of excellence so that, you know, some off the court or off the path behavior wasn't the detriment to my career.
And Mike, you know, I've talked a lot of off the air with you about this, but, you know, I'd love for you to share with the listeners, you know, where y'all came from and where you guys grew up. It was not like you just had this golden ticket. It was not like that it was just real easy to attain stardom. And when I say stardom, I mean to be paid to play a sport. Yeah, you might be paid a little bit to play in college, legally, illegally. I'm not going to go down that road. But you might be paid a little bit. But at the end of the day.
Not at Loyola. Yeah, they paid us in what they call educational credit hours.
You had to pay them at Loyola, didn't you, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. I paid a lot of money to them to let me go to that school.
I hear you, brother. But I mean, seriously, it was a struggle.
It was. We grew up during an era and a time where the homicide rate was at the all-time high in the country, was in Washington, D.C. The crack cocaine world had just really hit the scene in PG County, Maryland, which is interesting enough. That's where Kevin Durant's from. That's where Michael Beasley was from. You go down the list of now players that are from that area, it's amazing. Ty Lawson, the list just goes on and on. Jeff Green is another Northwestern alum. But I buried more of my friends from middle school to college than funerals I've been to in my adult life since I've been 20, because of homicides, black-on-black crimes per se, drugs, overdoses, just senseless and meaningless deaths at a alarming rate for any young person to go through. And, you know, my parents raised me in a Christian home, and Lynn's mom and dad did the same. But as you can see, evil befalls us all if we're not in the right place at the right time. And you know, the night of Lynn's death, I was at his mom and dad's house. We had just had a big celebration. He had just got back home. He just laced us with bags and bags of Reebok equipment, which he had just signed with. And then he left the house. And when he left the house, I had to leave because I had to get back to school because I had classes the next morning. And I didn't hear about it until they got to the hospital like 4 o'clock that morning. I got a phone call on my answering machine. I had one of those old tape answering machines. Didn't listen to it until the next morning, but didn't get a chance to listen to it because my college coach was at my door at 6 o'clock to take away my car keys, so I didn't try to go home. I had a test that day, and my mom told him to come over and get my keys because she knew I would have left. And it was one of the most emotional times of my life, other than the death of my grandparents, that I can remember, because, again, how close he and I were.
Co-host here of the Score Sports radio program, Mike Morrison, joining us right now, 26 years removed from the death of his very close friend, Len Bias. Mike, you mentioned the Reebok contract. Let me give you in comparison. He signed a $3 million contract in 1986.
Biggest contract of all time.
Inflation says that one per $1 equals $24.39 today. So that means that he signed a contract that in today's terms would have been $73,170,000, a shoe contract. So if you don't think in 1986 that they thought Len Bias was worth the largest amount ever, you're kidding yourself. Wow. It would be a young man walking away with $75 million shoe contract today. That's how much they thought of him at the time. Mike, I know no year gets easier to lose your friend. As you know, you and I lost a great friend and a co-host here on this program, and it never gets easier. I know when February 7th comes around every year, and you know the same date. It never gets easier, but one thing you can say is that in the game of basketball, his skill set always perseveres. And people have studied his film all the way up until today and say, you know what, if I can be the next Len Bias, even though he was not a Celtic great and they have not retired number 30 in Boston Garden, and even though he did not hang those banners, still to this day your friend lives on up in Boston.
Yeah, he does, and I appreciate that, man. You you talking about transition eras. His game would be so relevant today in the way that they're playing it because he was a big guy that could handle the ball and get his own shot. But he was so unselfish. Again, a lot like LeBron James is today. Not as skilled handling the basketball by no means, but a lot like LeBron James. Let's figure if Nike thinks that in today's day LeBron James is worth $100 million. I think Len would have been right up there with him. And Michael Jordan hadn't even signed his Nike deal yet. So it's amazing of how shoe companies can sometimes project the future, but it's all about sales.
Yeah, coming from a guy that has a shoe
Nike.
contract. Yeah, coming from a guy, and also coming from a guy telling you that he is currently wearing the shoes you gave him yesterday from your shoe contract.
Mo, I tweeted out Will's got show
shoes.
Yeah, easier for me to say.
Yeah.
Got show shoes now.
Yeah,
and it's a really bright blue.
It's a beautiful thing. I got to change the batteries in them right after the program.
I know your wife and your kids just love them.
You love them. They love them. Hey, Mike, man, we love you, bro. Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today on the program.